Welcome to Salina Media Connected. I'm Greg Stevens, and today we have a special guest, Representative Diana Dierks, who represents the east part of Salina, the 71st District. Representative Dierks is a Republican. She joined the legislature in 2013. Her occupation is a realtor. Representative Dierks grew up in Sacramento, California, and attended Butler County Community College. The committees she serves on are Ag and Natural Resources, Education, and Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security. Welcome, Representative Dierks.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Well, let's start out by talking a little bit about the 2020 term. What was it like?
Somewhat disappointing. I was hopeful that we would be able to get some additional bills passed. My constituents take their time to go to Topeka to be a conferee oftentimes. And I just felt, that it would have been nice if we would have been able to have put them aboard in front of the whole body for their decision as to whether to make them a law.
Now, I understand that quite a bit of the Statehouse was closed off in the last few months, and people weren't allowed into the Statehouse. Is that true?
They were. I know when we went back up there, they had a screen off to where they had nurses where they took your temperature, made sure, gave you a mask to wear while we were finishing up the session.
Mm-hmm. So what were the major issues in 2020?
Well, as usual, budget. We have to make sure that we have adequate funding for those entities that we want to get accomplished. For instance, legislature approved a $19.9 billion budget for the fiscal year 2021, which starts in July. The budget is about $1.2 billion more than the budget for the current fiscal year. And the House passed the budget 99-16, and it passed the Senate 28-10. That was something on the budget issue, to provide money to funding schools and taking care of things for the state.
Any other issues?
Well, the biggest thing is the COVID-19 relief, naturally. The legislator passed a bill that gave lawmakers oversight through the legislative budget process over the state spends hundreds of millions of federal dollars coming from the federal government for coronavirus relief. The bill passed 76-34 in the House and 27-11 in the Senate. Vitally needed, but that it had a little catch to it, because I believe the thing of it was trying to take some of the power away from the governor, and that was something, that was of concern. I guess being a governor is one thing, but if you look back in ages and ages before when they would used to have the plague, and that's what exactly I kind of copy that to this, because it is in essence a plague. It's worldwide. It's not just here at home. And so it's probably very difficult to make a decision as how best to take care of our people in the state of Kansas without spending all of our revenue, but yet we still have to be cognizant of what our needs and what we need to be doing.
And that was done in the special session on May 21st, or was it done?
It was a lengthy session, and I just truly felt that we could have been doing this a lot sooner, because this epidemic had been going on quite a while, and something that should have been addressed immediately. But I'm feeling, you'll have to excuse me, I have an allergy today with all these flowers. An economic development and electric rates We still covered the foster children, governor's emergency management powers. That was what we were just talking about. I wanted to make sure that I was correct, so I wanted to check my notes here. They passed the bill extending the governor's current emergency declaration to May 31st, at which point she would need approval for a 30-day extension. This is where they kind of had a little tumble there of exactly what powers that he or she as a governor should have. Bill would give the governor the authority to close businesses during the disaster delegation, and that's just common sense. I mean, if you have people out there with a entity that's killing people, you don't want them to go into businesses such as restaurants where a large amount of people are. So, that's just a point that needs to be done. But at the same time, it also hurts the businesses that are doing that. I know the restaurants really took it, especially buffets, because, the people coming and going and getting their own food. So it was something that really needed to be thought out very carefully, each piece by piece.
And then the governor vetoed that, didn't she?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that one.
The governor vetoed that, didn't she?
Yes, she did. Because there were, to be quite honest with you, there was something brought up in the discussion on that if we pass that bill, it would also encumber some other entities. And I have to apologize for it because we were doing this like at 2 o'clock in the morning. But there were some other entities that would also be impaired by the same statute that we were wanting to pass. And it would not really be that beneficial for the state to pass it.
What was your vote? How did you vote on that bill?
That one I voted no.
Okay. And you're going back into session again, what, June 3rd?
June 2nd and 3rd.
Oh, 2 days
Right.
this time. So there won't be any all-nighters this time.
I hope not. They're, I understand that, they wanted to get things done, but at the same time, I really truly felt that we had adequate time, but we just didn't use it as well as perhaps we should have. And we could have been doing this a lot sooner without taking that time. There was a vote taken before that, some years ago, in fact, it was just the year before I became a legislator, that we lost one of our legislators because of the staying over the night, long hours, and then trying to drive home, and he was killed. That was legislator Bob Veto. And they had to override that in order for us to do so. And that vote itself was very close as to whether or not we should endanger anyone in the legislative body.
Mm-hmm.
To say that and maybe just extend the session at that point.
Mm-hmm. So the Kansas City, Kansas Star editorial board said in a headline, GOP lawmakers got what they wanted from Kansas Governor Kelly, and now they're mad.
Well, first of all, I have great thoughts on the media itself, the newspapers. This is what keeps our constituents informed. And I think it just would be dependent on what each individual readership would think about that. They always like to come out with some great headline, but there also would be nice if they would explain exactly what that we're talking about and maybe how we could have made it better or worse.
Yeah. So one of the things they were kind of talking about is that Governor Kelly has a reopening plan she gave back to the counties to develop, rather than it being something that the state legislature or the governor would put into action. How do you feel about that?
I think I'm all for local control. And I really truly feel that even though all the counties belong within the state, but each county is not always the same. And there could be some things that would be able to save the counties some extra money on a project that they have. if they have a little more latitude of freedom to make their own decisions, because they know their county the best. You couldn't take Wyandotte County and compare it with Saline County because they're complete difference. You have a huge populace in that, and we have to kind of take a look at how it's going to affect our folks.
June 1st is, I'm kind of changing the subject here on us.
Okay.
June the 1st is the deadline for filing for re-election.
Mm-hmm.
I think you filed for re-election.
Yes, I have.
Okay, so how
Some
do
time ago, actually.
how do
Mhm.
you foresee your campaign progressing in this time of change here with COVID-19?
Thank you for asking me that question, because that is right at the top of the list. I am one that really enjoys going door to door, face to face with my constituents, because my husband has a timer in the car, and sometimes it's 10 minutes and sometimes it's 30 or 40 minutes. But I do stay there and try to answer and at least take notes so that when I go back, I would be able to obtain the answers, the correct answers, if I wasn't able to then. But I do have somewhat of a thought process here that I want to be respectful for those who are, because this is something that's completely unknown. And myself, I would be willing to go and knock on the door, but out of respect for the individual whose door that I'm knocking on, perhaps may not want to talk face to face with me, and so I'm trying to think the best way to communicate with them during the election process and outdoor campaigning as to how to respect their wishes.
Mm-hmm.
If I should mail or should I go to their door?
So what do you plan on doing?
Well, I thought is I would leave my information, my phone, my cell number, my email address, if I do decide to do that, and leave a hanger on the door and just say, please call me or communicate with me if you have any questions at all. I'm here and I will answer every single one of them.
Now, do you have any opposition from within the Republican Party or the Democratic Party?
Well, I've been checking the Secretary of State and I haven't seen anyone yet, but you never know. I'm hopeful that
go ahead.
Huh?
That might not be, going door to door might not be much of an issue if there's no opposition.
Right. Yeah, but I'd still communicate. I enjoy that because, every year there might be something different and somebody might have an issue that might not be someone else's issue that I might be able to help. And so that's what I'm there for.
If you're reelected, what do you hope to achieve in this coming term?
Well, first of all, I would hope to achieve that we would be able to get more bills out once they come out of committee and actually worked on by the legislative body. And that was one of my issues, let's say, with what happened this past year, is that only 8 bills were passed. And we have individuals in our community that take the time and effort, take a day off from work because they have a big concern about perhaps a bill that one of the committees are thinking about passing, and become conferee. And if we just totally ignore that effort, I really felt that it really wasn't doing our job.
And you had how many bills that passed in the spring?
8 total.
8 bills.
Mm-hmm.
But there were considerably more that were in the hopper to be discussed.
Right, there were several that were below the line, and that never was. No, that is all up to leadership. We really don't have anything to do with that. Leadership decides, what bills come above and which do not. And I know that there were several bills below the line that I think really would have helped our individuals. One of which was we actually had something that was dealing with Medicaid expansion, and now we're faced with this epidemic that probably really could have come in favor of people who are needing to have that simply do not have the funds for that type of medical attention.
Was Medicaid expansion part of the discussion during the special session the other day?
No,
It wasn't. Can it come up in the next special session next week?
it might. It just, right now, we haven't received any information as to what's going to be discussed. But I think it would certainly, as in the past, I've been adamant supporter of it. I know there have been some that think, no, these people can go out and get a job, but there are a lot of folks that simply can't. And I think we need to take care of our own, and that would be one of the ways. And visiting with medical personnel said, boy, this would be been an opportune time to be able to have those funds available.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned below the line, and for those that are listening that might not know what that means,
Okay.
what is this line all about?
Well, they take all of the bills that are passed out of committees,
Mm-hmm.
and then they evaluate them, and they just keep them below the line. And these are the bills that passed. And then when they get ready, the power that be, to say these are what we're going to be working on, then they are the ones that will go down and select which bills that we should work on. So if you had 200 bills, I can see, that would be quite a task trying to get it all. So they see. I'm sure that they probably look at, is there something already out there that's similar that we really don't need to expand upon it right now? Or is this something that's really going to help our folks, especially now during this pandemic, that we're going to have to use to help, it's a lot of it is circumstance. But I think most of it, especially education bills, and financing thereof, they need to be brought above the line so we have a chance to listen to it and vote on it.
So a line is kind of like an agenda for the day.
It is, but it's the leadership. It's all the leadership who decide which ones come before that, come above the line, and that's the one sore thought for me, is if we have something that's going to help people educationally, job wise, and we've taken the time, to sit in committees, have the conferees come in here, pass them out, to at least haven't had an opportunity to be listened to by the whole body. Because not everyone is on the same committees.
So regarding education, what do you see as the future budgets for K-12 or higher education? Will it be impacted in the coming semester or the remaining part of the year, or is it after January the 1st, in the next budget year that we may have an impact?
I think it's going to be the next budget year. I had a note here. I was trying to locate it. I brought it with me, because you know me in education. So far, the education budget looks fairly well. But again, circumstances can arise that maybe not be quite adequate enough. So we are in such a turmoil right now of we've been faced with something that's never been faced for how many years, clear back in history. And now we're having to deal with the normal type budget situation, dealing with something that it's being very costly in everything. There's money that's going to have to be shifted around just to keep us solvent for the next time frame as to how we can do this. But right now, we do have, it looks like, a fairly adequate budget for the schools. But again, that is also up for debate, and we might very well talk about it when we go back, because we did not conclude all of our business.
So, Representative Dierks, we've covered quite a bit of territory here, from the special session to the legislative term. What questions have I not asked that I should be asking?
Well, I think the questions that need to be answered is, first of all, what we need to do in order to make our legislative body in passing bills be a little bit more concerned about some of those that may be lingering behind underneath that line that maybe we should have, and that maybe take a closer look at some of those that aren't being brought above the line to where we can really actually work on them. Because that's the whole legislative process.
What do you think the chances of that may be happening in this coming term, given that there are several legislators that are stepping down or retiring after this term, last term?
No? Well, I guess we're just going to hope that those replacements that come on board are going to be like ourselves. You know, first day I didn't know what the heck I was going to be doing, and somebody handed me a pen and they said, get started, and that's where I was.
Yeah.
And it comes gradually, and as you get into the process. But I feel any of those who may be, you know, ones that are going to be retiring in their placement, oftentimes have a conversation with those who are thinking about running and taking their place, and letting them know exactly, you know, what's expected of them when they represent the people of the district.
What do you expect in relation to the Senate campaign on the Republican side? I think Senator Wagle dropped out yesterday. So we have 4 candidates now. How do you think that's going to fare?
I think it's just who's out really responsible enough to go out and do their due diligence and talk to the people. It's the people who make the decisions, and they're the ones that are going to have to really able to get those folks to understand what they have in mind and how they're going to be represented.
I think the 2 leading candidates are Chris Kobach and Representative Roger Marshall.
Okay.
Do you have a choice there?
No, I don't wish to say that, you know, because I try to keep this, you know, just low key and let the people decide themselves. And I think as a candidate, you have to prove yourself to those that you're going to be representing. You have to have that comfort zone. Oftentimes, you know, there are things that come up, and then you have to explain why you voted a certain way. And they say, why did you do that, Diana? You know, I says, because it was going to be good for you, or it really had some consequences that I really wasn't sure about. And that's going to be the jobs of those 2 candidates to get across to the constituents as to whether or not they're capable of doing that.
Well, I've enjoyed having this conversation. On behalf of Salina Media Connection, we've been visiting with Representative Diana Dierks. And Diane, if you want to give us your phone number or email, especially email for people to contact you if you want.
Yes, in fact, thank you so much for asking me that, because it was one thing that I wanted to make available is, you know, if I'm not able to make it to all the homes during this time, that please feel free to email me with your concerns. I'm going to give you actually my real estate email. It's a lot easier. And that's Dierks, it's all lowercase. It's Dierks, D-I-E-R-K-S, at salinahomes.com.
All right.
And that way, you know, that way it's bipartisan, and they can just let me know what their thoughts are, and I'll try to get back to them as quickly as I can.
Okay. Thank you very much, Diane.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me.
You bet.